Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson.
Today's guest is Andrew Stallings, the founder and president of Athelo Group. Athelo is a combination of the words athlete and opportunity, and finding opportunities for athletes is exactly what Andrew is doing. He is managing athletes from niche sports such as motorsports and extreme sports. He has had his fair share of hurdles on the way, but he made it anyway. Get ready to learn if you need to be a lawyer to manage athletes, if Andrew will buy a Greek ice hockey team, who will play Andrew if there is ever a movie about his life, about his passion for ice hockey, and about being fired, on a voicemail, on his honeymoon, and much more. Andrew Stallings, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I think we were talking about it a little bit before we hit record, man. I'm running on fumes. I think I've hit the point in the season where it's one airplane after the next, and I'm waking up in my hotel rooms most days, having to call somebody from my team to remind me where the heck I am most times. So it's just a crazy time of the year. All good things, very exciting. We got WSL finals coming up, NASCAR, IndyCar, lots of boxing and lacrosse action, UFC as well. So it's just it's chaos, all while trying to build the momentum for 2023. So all good problems to have.
Sounds very exciting. And for those who might not know, you are the founder and president at Athelo Group. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what your role includes?
Yeah, so Athelo Group is basically a culmination of two words. It's athletes and opportunities smashed together to make a funky little run-on word that most people can't pronounce out of the gate. So usually it's good marketing. So I give you 10 bonus points today for getting it spot on because most people go Athelo, something like that. A lot of our athletes call it Athelo Burrito. So it's good marketing because it just leads us to always, or at least 9 times out of 10, explain the real reasoning and pronunciation of it. Marcus, to be honest, all of this started as a side hustle, and I think in today's society, we see a lot of people that are always looking for, that extra revenue stream, the passion driver, the builder, the momentum, something that scratches their itch more so than the mundane role or job that they have in life, the same routines that they have. And, I was and I have been very privileged my entire career to be working in sports and entertainment across a lot of different verticals of the business. But when I was, right around the time I was going to Anheuser-Busch, transitioning from Octagon and doing stuff at another agency for them, is when I kind of took this project upon myself to help a lot of my friends who were professional athletes in more niche sports verticals and properties. And they were running into these problems where, either the managers or the agents were either non-existent or they just had zero creativity, zero marketing skills. Many of them were lawyers. And that's not to say it's a bad trait to have, but I think those skills are better served or were traditionally better served in some of the bigger sports properties globally. The more niche and growing you get, the more creative you have to be in order to build excitement for everybody at the table, not just, brand, property, or anything else. So I kind of took it upon myself to look at it as a low risk, high reward situation. I remember the first thing I Googled was, do I have to be a lawyer to be a manager or an agent? And I think, many people in the last few years are starting to see that that's not necessarily the case. Now, don't get me wrong. I have I'm lucky to have some incredible experience by sitting in the rooms of, certain decision makers and brands who've negotiated multi-million-dollar deals, property deals, talent deals. So I'd like to think I have that good insight while also proactively studying, how the industry folds, having some good mentors. but I have a bulletproof team of lawyers and advisors around me that make sure that not only our agency, but also our athletes are 100% covered. So I don't try to wear a hat and say like, oh, look at me, I'm something I'm not. I absolutely am playing by the book in 100% of what we do and how we do it. We just try to do it by putting a very creative and thoughtful and long-term process first. So with that, traditionally, my background is in core four sports, by working at Siriusxm, Octagon, and Anheuser-Busch in the past. But what I've ultimately learned is that with these rising sport properties, such as action sports, motorsports, professional fighting, fitness, etc., there are hyper dedicated consumer audiences with tremendous buying power that the athletes are underrepresented and utilized. The properties kind of serve as this middleman or middle woman, middle person, however you want to identify, and say, we're making our end dues. We're slowly growing. Things are fine. There's really not a whole lot of momentum there. And then the brands rarely know exactly what to do by coming into these properties. They still believe they have to spend $500,000 on a tweet with Tom Brady to move the meter from a marketing perspective, when $50,000 could get them a one-year sponsorship with two of the biggest volleyball players in the world. And they could recognize a variety of different testing assets that, could test across a lot of different verticals of their business. So I came into this and I said, look, let's put a marketing hat on first. Let's think brand minded first. And then let's think agency minded second. And then everything that we do has to have that sandwich and effect of the athletes in the middle. And, we're driven by the opportunities for those athletes. So, about 70% of our business to date is action sports, motorsports, and fitness oriented properties. We do a little bit with UFC, with lacrosse. We're venturing into other verticals such as snowboarding and also golf in the next year or so. But to date, we have, just over 20 professional athletes on retainer that we're managing, about 120 plus different agencies, brands, and properties on retainer that we're doing consulting or some sort of marketing projects for. And we're really just trying to be a bit non-traditional. Are we set out to continuously do things in as a marketing term goes, disruptive way? Not necessarily. We're just trying to do things that at the heart and core of it have the athlete's best future in our mindset. But also with the brands, we speak brand. We speak that language. We understand return. We understand sales. We understand EBITDA, all that stuff. And that has been really reassuring for us because we've been able to step into rooms where a lot of people think, here come these creatives, here come these agents, here come this. They don't get our sales. They don't get our distribution. They don't get this. On the contrary, we're constantly studying different trends, markets, categories, et cetera. So very long-winded answer. We started this about 4 years ago. It kind of happened very serendipitously as a part-time thing that rolled over into a full-time opportunity at the least convenient moment possible. But we ended up turning something out of nothing. So very proud of where we are today. And, we're just continuing to scratch the surface in a lot of ways.
That's fantastic. And you said that you're a sports agency for more niche sports. Was that by design, or you wanted to start an agency and you saw that these athletes are usually unrepresented?
Yeah, I think when you look at the NFL, for example, here in the States, we take a look at the third string practice squad running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. If that individual is listening, I apologize in advance. But traditionally, no matter what level of star power you are in the league, they still find themselves at some point in their career with a sense of entitlement that's man, I should be the biggest Red Bull athlete in the world. And it's what in the world? And their agents only let them believe that. They go to market with, letting them believe you absolutely should be paying so-and-so this much money. And the brands are sitting there scratching their heads. They're what in the world? So, when I first looked at it, there was a lot of red tape. When you look at the big properties, you have to conform a lot to players associations, the way that the leagues want to mandate and do things, very similar to a bit of how the NIL space is going. It's starting to get a little bit more and more regulated with lots of layers, which it's not bad. It's just one of those things that for me personally, I recognize that there are leagues and properties like NASCAR, with the MLS, with IndyCar, with CrossFit that are not even close to having that structure. And albeit it's like the wild, wild west in a lot of ways, some people look at that and they're like, man, I don't want anything to do with that. It's so messy. It's so crazy. But the beautiful thing is that you can actually come up to, the landfill, the dump, if you will, and have a broom and just start slowly chipping away at cleaning things up. And that's kind of what we've been able to do. We're not, as I mentioned, trying to come into these different properties and shake things up and make it our own and be Picasso and change sports on their head. We're really just trying to bring a different viewpoint and a different voice while we can and while people will actually listen. If I were to do what I'm doing right now and go to the NFL and do it, I would have the door slammed in my face. Same way I have had the door slammed in my face many times that I've offered this same consultation advice to, different leagues and properties at different levels, only to see that, they may act like they're not listening, but I see either on social media or in the media or through their athletes that they are practicing some of the things that we're preaching. And that really is, just kind of evolving, enhancing, educating, and entertaining, and living off of those 4 E's at the core of everything that we do. So, a lot of people are listening, whether they say they aren't or they are listening, they're taking note of it. And for us, we had to start somewhere. And, the good news is that where we started, we've built a good foundation and a good mountaintop for a lot of these athletes and brands and properties. And we're not going to be, just saying, okay, our work here is done, on to the next one. We still have a lot of work to do. So, this is, people always ask me, what's the end goal? What's the plan? I think it's too long to tell right now. We're not trying to just sell our agency and move and sell our relationships with our athletes and brands and, get a payday. As far as I'm concerned, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And I really want to help athletes. I want to help brands. I hope that on my tombstone and at my, my graveyard one day, they say Andrew Stallings was a resource, if for nothing else, he was a connector. He was a community builder and he was a resource. And I think, you can't put a dollar sign on people like that. And I think, few often we see people like that come into the space, that it takes a lot of time for them to get that recognition and that credibility. And they don't need money. They don't need the billions and billions of dollars, because their network is their net worth and they will always be taken care of no matter what, so long as their community and their foundation of life is strong. So, long-winded answer again, but that was never the plan, but we're just getting started in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and a lot of sports that you work with have very interesting futures. Formula One, like the motorsport in general, has gotten, hype lately after Drive to Survive on Netflix, and NASCAR with their TV contract for next year that I think will be like triple of what it was. Mm-hmm. So can you also see the benefits of these niche sports, that they have more growth opportunities?
Absolutely. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't call that out, right? We are constantly one step away from breaking the bank, and breaking into a whole new realm of sport like never before. The World Surf League is doing an incredible job of that. They too have a contract with Apple TV Plus and they had a new TV series called Make It or Break It that came out this last year. They're already in the process of filming season 2 right now, and very much a similar narrative to the Drive to Survive series. Like, they're looking at how to model certain things out of that Formula One model with Netflix. In NASCAR, they're looking at the business first mindset, while also keeping entertainment at the shell of everything that they do. When you have the likes of Alvin Kamara serving as the chief engagement officer for the sport, or you have Michael Jordan or Pitbull as owners of teams, or in our case, actor Frankie Muniz that's trying to go be a NASCAR driver next year, those storylines are captivating, and they're going to bring in a shock factor that, in a lot of ways, whether people like it or not, is a lot like WWE. And that's where we probably don't give enough credit to a property like that every one of us knows what WWE is, whether we like it or we don't. We can't say that we've never not watched a WWE moment in our career. There's always been something. There's always been something that, if we're like, oh, either that's so stupid or that's so corny or that's this, we're still talking about it. And I think there's a lot of credit to what they do. And I think that model is always used in corporate rooms as a case study for, how they're working with their community, how they're working on their digital capabilities, and their storytelling like never before. So, there's a lot of growth opportunity in every single thing that we do. We do not jump into a sport, property, or athlete relationship unless we look at something that has at least 25x return. Has to be minimum 25x return. And that may seem asinine. It may seem absolutely crazy. Do we hit 25x every single time? No, but like I said, we've been doing this 4 years. We may be 15x on one relationship, and guess what? We still have 10 more X to go. So the good news is that the ceiling with everything that we do just seems so distant, and we have a lot of room to stretch our arms and legs. And it's almost like sitting in the first class of, sports management, right? A lot of people think it's crazy. It's not that profitable. You're playing in the breadcrumbs. But, for us, there's nothing but tremendous upside. And that's what really excites us, is that we can do things differently. Our ideas are never too stupid. The partnerships that we're building are, always raising an eyebrow and a bit competitive to the typical norm of how we do things. And people are taking notice. I get more LinkedIn views on my profile after we make an announcement, just because it's not something traditional than I could even fathom. And that's not just me, that's 100% we with what we're doing in our team.
Yeah. You mentioned also that you do some work with the UFC, and I'm a fan myself, and also we have had 2 guests from IMAF on the podcast before. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do with UFC?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, it's a bit minimal. So we got connected to, at the time, and I guess it still holds true, an up and coming bantamweight fighter, Tony Gravely, who is from Southwest Virginia. And it was through an old family friend and colleague of mine. And at the time, Tony was still an amateur. He was up and coming through the ranks. And we've worked with him in the past to help, kind of secure and educate some sponsorship deals, while also just consulting with him, different athletes, different brands on, what are the ways around kind of dealing with the UFC. I say that a bit loosely just because the UFC traditionally activates and owns and operates as a core force sport, with their ownership group and everything that they do. Their partnerships are very lock and key with everything that they do. There is no gray area. Like everything in the UFC is black and white in a lot of ways. For us, we're always taking note of what those potential areas are. Not loopholes. I don't really like saying that, but what are other areas that are safe to activate within? What are the other moments that you can captivate and be able to still excite your audience while not completely pissing off the UFC or the property or any of the other partners involved? So, most of that's just been from a consulting perspective with brands that are interested in getting in the space. Obviously, no one wants to just show up to the table and write a $5 million check without doing their homework. So I think we find ourselves in a lot of conversations with brands that see that we work with a UFC fighter on our roster, and they come to us, for more consulting practice and property and, relationship management. So it's not a massive piece of what we do, but we do a little work with the UFC, combat sports, and then also boxing as a whole.
I don't know if you have worked with athletes from more mainstream sports or bigger sports, if you can compare. But do you think that the up-and-coming athletes for a smaller, like a more niche sport, do you think that they have different needs than an NFL player, for example?
At the core of it, no. I think athletes all need similar things. And it just depends on how privileged are you to have a league, team, or property that covers many of those expenses, or sponsors that cover those expenses. In the NFL and NBA, for example, they don't necessarily have to worry so much about hotel, travel costs, trainers, nutrition. A lot of that comes with, their team contract and what they're getting from there. However, a professional volleyball player still has to pay out of pocket for all their travel. They have to pay for their trainers, their nutritionists, their gym memberships, all of that. So, many of those leagues and properties don't have the same luxury. And, that's not a jab. It's just nature of business. Like, you do see a lot of people that sit here and they kind of hold a torch and they yell and scream and they get angry about, inequality and how we should be looking at, like how come women's sports aren't doing so well and how come this, how come that? And I always look at stuff as, it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like you can't yell and scream and, force fans or force people to enjoy a brand, enjoy a sport, enjoy a moment. It has to come authentically, and you have to build that authenticity in every single thing that you do. So when we look at just that authenticity factor, I always tell when I speak to, like, we get reached out to by professional athletes and the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL all the time, or we have different agents that will come to us and say, hey, we do the team deal. We don't want to do any endorsement deals, any sponsorship deals, any media, any PR. You all can take all this. And every single time we turn it down, just because same to it, I believe that agents should be a little bit more proactive in what they're doing. I think long gone are the days that you can be a powerhouse, professional agent that has 300 athletes and just sit there and negotiate only team deals and collect your 1% to 5%. I think athletes are getting smarter. They want more. And, many of these athletes, even at the bigger levels of like the core four properties, they're making 50, 60, $70 million. But the crazy thing is they still want a $5,000 influencer deal to post about Burt's Bees chapstick. Like they still want that. And I think it's a bit of FOMO, to be honest with you. Like they feel like they're missing out. And it's not even about the money. It's just that they feel like they're missing out on an opportunity. As where many of the athletes in the rising sport properties, they're doing this to survive. Like they're doing this because they have to catch that next flight to New Orleans for that volleyball tournament, or they have to get to that, next race or something like that if they're racing in the lower series of motorsports. So, I think they all have the same needs, Marcus, but at the same time, it's really about how you're creatively structuring and getting that while also finding money that's going to help them net. Many of our athletes will come to us and be like, I need hotels in Santa Monica next week for this event. And it's like, I can't pick up the phone and call every hotel in Santa Monica and be like, would you give us free hotels for a social media post? Because we're talking about business here. Athelo Group's got to eat too, right? And I'm not going to make money off that. But at the same time, like, will we do that sometimes? We'll do it. Like, we have no problem doing it, so long as we feel comfortable and confident that there's a story there. I can't just call a random hotel and be like, hey, I have a pro volleyball player that wants to come do this. We need 2 rooms for 2 nights. Okay. Like they're going to laugh at you. Even if, I'm an Olympic gold medalist volleyball player, they're going to be like, dude, no, like, are you crazy? But if I have a story where it's like, this athlete is from this area, they used to stay at this hotel every single day growing up, in the summertime and train there religiously with, their grandparents. Like you have to always build a narrative in any single thing that you do in order to help our athletes save money on expenses and cost. From the authenticity factor of it, like that's the only way that makes a lot of sense. But I think just going back to your original question, a lot of these athletes, they're all the same. They all have needs, wants, desires. And I can tell you confidently that no matter how much you check the box on all those, no matter how many championships you win, no matter how great your marriage is and happy your kids are and healthy you are, it's never, ever good enough. And it's never going to be good enough. And it's the one thing that I've discovered the most is just that there is no satisfaction. Like there's no 110% satisfaction with what they're doing. And that's just the competitive side of it. That's the ruthless competitor in every single human of what they do. I too, in the same way, I could get off this meeting right now with you, Marcus, and close a $150 million deal and feel like I won the lottery. You know how long that's going to last? About 30 seconds until I'm probably calling Rico or someone from my team and saying, hey, guess what? We got to go do this, and this. We don't stop. And we're all athletes in our own mindset. And we're all just continuing to look for new ways to grow, improve, and get to that next step. You can win the Super Bowl. And I guarantee you, Tom Brady's thinking about, how do I win the next Super Bowl? That's what's made him so good over the years.
I'm honored that you're here talking to me instead of closing $150 million deals.
if I could close a $150 million deal right after this podcast, you're definitely getting a cut off of it. So
is that true? I will hold you to that.
You please do. Please do. I'm going to go and delete my whole inbox right now to make sure that I don't have a $150 million deal sitting there now.
That's amazing. Yes, except for this $150 million that we share, we also have a shared interest for ice hockey.
Yes.
Are you working also in ice hockey? Do you have athletes there, or is that just an interest outside?
You know, I've always said that you can't work at your favorite restaurant because you'll lose the taste of it, right? And I think for me, hockey is something that started in my life as a coping mechanism. When I was 10 years old, my parents, had to pick me up and move me to the other side of the state where I was living in Virginia at the time because my dad got transferred to a new bank. So, I went in third grade, 10 years old. I was, just starting to learn how to write cursive. I moved to Roanoke, Virginia. All the kids are more advanced than me. I can't write anything in cursive and they're writing paragraphs. I was behind. I was socially behind. I was educationally behind. I had no friends. And for me, someone who is naturally born to be outgoing and charismatic, I was bullied a lot and it was tough. So my dad quickly jumped into action. It was like, there's a minor league hockey team here in Virginia called the Roanoke Express. And I'm going to get season tickets and we're going to go every single night. Like, this will be our thing. So the year and a half that we lived there in Roanoke, it was some of the best years of my life to spend with my dad, because I got to really understand not only like the world of sports, but also the world of sports business and operations at 10 years old, how an organization is run. Because I got to see the behind the scenes of it. I got to know players that were 19, 20, or 45 years old. There was never peak prime players playing at that league. It was either the really young college kids still trying to make it, or, the people like that were washed up on the back end of their career. But it was really something that lit my fire, for trying to get into sports that still carries me to this day. My dream is to own a minor league hockey team. And I want to do that before I'm 50 years old. People are like, well, that's not that hard. You need maybe like a couple $1 million. And it's like, yeah, but even if I'm like a 1% owner in something, it'd be a dream. It'd be a dream to do. And those closest to me know that's my dream in a lot of ways. But I coached women's high school hockey up here in Connecticut for about 7 years. Took some time off after my son was born about 9 months ago. I've, as of this morning, have turned down another opportunity to coach still in high school hockey up here. I'm just too busy. And, I really look forward to right around September, October time, because you have football starting up again, hockey starting up again. Baseball playoffs are going on. It's the best sports time of the year. And, I really look forward to hockey specifically, because I just don't think it gets nearly enough credit for the upside potential and even just game day experience that's there. So, it's truly something that I love so much. I have a lot of friends that play in a lot of different leagues. They reach out to me. I give them, consulting advice where possible. I can't find myself to be a manager or an agent, just because I just don't think that you should, work at your favorite restaurant, because you'll lose that taste for it. And the few times that I have had to cover a professional hockey game doing writing or journalism, I quickly just lost all of my luster for it. Like, imagine watching the Washington Capitals and trying to keep track of the penalty minutes, the plus minus, the stat line for the fourth line center that's going this end to end. And you're just covering all this. And I was just like, this sucks. The stats of this sucks. I just want to drink a beer and I want to scream. That's what I want to do. So sometimes I just want to be a fan. And, I'm so privileged and I'm so lucky to have a job that gives me an opportunity to be on the business side and still scratch the itch, of what I care about as a sports fan. But at the end of the day, when all this turns off, my outlet can always be hockey. I can still go to my garage and shoot pucks, and I now have to worry about dealing with NHL contracts and stuff like that. I can still go to a minor league hockey game and just have 15 and a half beers and just let the night take me away. Like, sometimes we need that. We all need to be fans at the core of what we do. And, hockey's forever going to be my outlet. So, I think the next time that I find myself into a professional business venture with hockey will be when I own a minor league hockey team.
I know a team in Greece that's probably not too expensive. I was living there for a couple of years and playing ice hockey there. So
Nice.
if you want to start summer, I think that's a good place to start.
Send them over my way. I'll buy them tomorrow. Let's do it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll do that. This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. You alluded to it a little bit now in your answer that you were struggling a little bit in school, and your Instagram bio says, founder of Athelo Group, every college I applied to said no, got fired from a few jobs, still made it. So can you give us a little bit the story of Andrew and how you ended up where you are now?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, when I was in Roanoke, Virginia for that year and a half, that was kind of when I knew very early on that I wanted to be in sports. We moved back to the other side of the state shortly after that. And I spent the rest of my time in Southeast Virginia, in Newport News specifically. I came up around high school time, my junior and senior year. I was like, okay, where am I going to college? Where am I going to college? Do I want to go to college? Yeah, I'll go, but I'll figure it out at the very last minute. For somebody that absolutely hates being tardy and not on time, I have to be on time for everything. I was a master procrastinator back in the day. So I'm constantly looking at stuff, back early on in my career and laughing when I realized that I just never really applied to colleges until the very last, moment when I could, my senior year. But I applied to, I think, 15 different colleges, got rejected from every single one of them, except for a Mennonite college, which I had no idea what a Mennonite college was back in the day. I just knew that I didn't belong there at that time. And the last college I applied to was Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. It was right outside of the Washington, D.C. area. I was a huge D.C. sports fan. All of my family, for the most part, was in D.C. I was like, it's a no-brainer. I absolutely should go there. So I wrote, I got rejected casually, like I did from everywhere else, but didn't even let it faze me. I came home that day, wrote a handwritten note to the dean of admissions. I wish for the life of me that I could get a copy of that note and see what I said. I've asked the university, I've asked everybody, no one has it. I have no idea where it is, but I pleaded my first sales pitch. And I was just like, this is why you should accept me. You can do it under these conditional terms and, please reconsider. A week later, they sent me a note back. They're like, congratulations, you're accepted at Marymount University. So, I ended up going there, finishing in 4 years, right on time, made Dean's List one semester. No clue how that happened. And then ended up getting an internship at Siriusxm during my senior year. And that was a similar boat. I needed an internship to graduate. I had applied to probably 80 internships, and it was the night before deadline. And I'm sitting there in my dorm room just freaking out. I'm like, I'm not going to get a job. I'm not going to get an internship. I'm not going to graduate, because colleges do a really good job of dangling the worst case scenario over your head. They don't give you the alternatives. They don't want you to believe that they're alternatives because, otherwise I think everybody would take the easy way out. But at that time, I'm pulling my hair out like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to graduate. But I actually got a call from Siriusxm, around 9:00 at night on a Tuesday from the head internship coordinator over there. And they said, hey, we have 70 interns that come in. We just had somebody drop out. Would you like to fill this spot? And I said, yes. And I don't even think I remember if I actually knew at the point that it was Siriusxm. I think somebody called me and said, internship, can you start Monday? And I just said yes. And then it hit me. I was like, wow, Siriusxm, pretty big company. I could do that. But it was a great opportunity. So, from there, I spent about 5 years. I worked my way up full time after I graduated, switched over to Octagon shortly thereafter, came up to Connecticut from the Washington, D.C. area. I thought Connecticut was all the way up near Maine. And that's just what happens when you don't travel at all at an early age. Ended up coming up to Octagon and working in hospitality and global sports sponsorship for many different brands. Helped out on the talent and property sides a little bit, just being proactive, raising my hand, being able to sit in meetings and listen. and then jumped around, to a few different agencies. After that, working with Anheuser-Busch across the board, both global and US, and then Constellation Brands doing field and trade marketing before I went on my honeymoon, and my little side hustle in Athelo Group at the time was put on full blast, because when we landed back from our honeymoon, I actually found out that I was laid off as part of a 90-person layoff. So imagine you're sitting first class, your beautiful wife is just sipping her champagne, like, yeah, we're married. Whoop. And I'm sitting there like on the phone. I'm just like, crap. So I gave myself a pretty aggressive timeline of 90 days for my severance package that they gave me. And I was like, I have to set this list of lengthy goals, just to accomplish in order to make this a reality. Looking back on it at the time, it was asinine, the goals that I had set. But I knew that if I wanted to do this as a new married man, and in order to sustain the life that I was doing, I had to hit these goals. And I'll never forget, 2 weeks before that 90-day period, it was the last thing I had to do was buy out my two friends who were my business partners that I played men's hockey with up here in Connecticut. And I'm very, very lucky that they gave me the opportunity so easily to buy them out, because looking back on it, it could have been a very, very messy situation. But I think they were very comfortable with their 9-to-5 jobs. They were like, yeah, sure, Stallings, go right ahead. And I know that looking back on it now, they probably see everything that I'm doing. And while they're happy and proud, they're probably like, shoot, we should have stayed on board.
That's a fantastic story. That sounds like a movie almost.
I'm leaning on Rico from my team to hopefully go pitch that to Paramount Pictures next week. So we're really hoping to be the next Tom Cruise, situation, and really just go win 15 Academy Awards. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, do that. So who's playing you? Is it Tom Cruise?
I think Tom Cruise would probably play Rico, and then I was hoping you would play me. So
yeah, for sure. Sure.
Naturally.
I'll do that.
We have the same glasses, same hair.
Yeah, you see?
Come on.
That's true. I'll do it. Just let me know. I'll come over.
Done. I'll have the contract sent over tomorrow.
Awesome. To be serious, that's a fantastic story. And I guess you have learned quite a bit during this time. And so what would be your best advice for someone who wants to pursue a sports industry career?
I think you have to make a habit of talking to every single person around you. We hear it all too often that networking is key. You have to network. But I think it's hard to distinguish what the value of networking is and how to do it the right way, because we're always thinking about me at the forefront rather than we, and you have to really flip that script. You have to be comfortable being poor. You have to be comfortable being vulnerable. You have to really be comfortable with just being relentlessly on the back burner of a lot of things. And it's something that not a lot of people in this world are content doing. They're not very comfortable doing that, but you have to be really, comfortable just, operating in this gray area, or even in this negative of life. I think all too often we look at, success and money and upside and fame and potential and, the powerful people that we get to be around. But I think the best people in this world are able to distinguish success as a minimal short-term feeling. And you have to be somebody or somebody's that is willing to not look at success as an ultimate goal, but it's almost like a short-term high that you'll get. It's like that first sip of coffee in the morning. It's the 30 minutes after a workout feeling, it's the lovemaking feeling. And it's that moment that is very short-term in anything that you do. And you have to remember that. I think for myself, I'm very, very happy. And I take the few moments out of my day to reflect on what is good in my life. But overall, I'm never satisfied. I'm never content. And I think anybody on my team would tell you that. I look at every single thing and I get just very, very hard down on myself, on my team, because I know that we can and we should and we will always be doing that much better. So I think you have to adjust to a mindset that perfection is not obtainable, but you have to think that it is. You have to think that you can always do better and chip away at it and pick at it. And it's something that, you have to always strive for more. You can never, ever, ever be content. So for me, it's the importance of building that community and giving, but also just knowing that it's never good enough. Nothing is ever good enough.
So, I mean, your whole story is like a bit of a come from behind victory, I feel. And you have definitely battled adversity. You have said that you're used to failure. And I know that you have also struggled with some difficulties in your personal life. How have you overcome all of this to come where you are now?
I don't think it's, how do I answer this the right way? It's not anywhere near done. Like any of the adversities I've dealt with, I'm still dealing with them. And, I have nothing to hide. My wife has had breast cancer at an early age. I've lost parents and family members. I've had highs and lows, but my story isn't any different from anybody else's, Marcus, like truthfully. And I think it's, I guess it's commendable in some ways that I've been able to prevail, against some challenges in life. But I have friends that have dealt with 3 times as much stuff as I have, and they're still very successful in their own sense. But they didn't start a business. They're not traveling the world. They're not living these sexy lives, but they have very respectful jobs. They have a healthy, partner, healthy kids. And to me, they're just as commendable in a lot of ways, but they don't get the same, opportunity to sit here and share that story. And people don't find it as exciting and exhilarating. For me, it's always just surrounding myself and looking at people that can make me better. And, whether that's people on my team, whether that's athletes that I work with, brands that I work with, I want to be better, and I have to be better with the community and tribe around me. If I had somebody that was sitting here, including my wife, that was like, "You're amazing. You're perfect. You just closed that deal. You're awesome." On the contrary, I hear nothing but complaints 99.9% of the day. Athletes, if you could see my phone right now, I'm just looking at it as it sits here on my desk. So many fires that I'm going to have to put out when I get off this phone. Do I warrant that all the time? Do I say, "Oh, woe is me"? No. And I signed up for this. And even if I didn't sign up for it, so what? I didn't sign up for my wife to get cancer. I didn't sign up for the issues that we've had with conceiving a child. I didn't, but at the same time, we have to just, you can't go to the blackjack table and sit there and say, what about me? A dealer, come on, how come you got 21 and I got 20? It's life. It's life. And, I think in a lot of ways, you just kind of have to shrug your shoulders and say, what can you do? You can sit here and just, woe is me, hands on your head, oh, the world's ending, or you can keep going. I think a great quote that I heard recently from one of my clients, Frankie Muniz, he said in an interview is that he constantly feels like he's battling time, and that he's, his biggest enemy is time. So I'll get text messages from him at 4 a.m. his time. And he's a new dad, and he's an actor, and he's doing all these things. And this guy just feels like he's missing out on so much. Yet he's probably had one of the most exciting lives of the last 36 years that people don't even know about and never will really know about. But if you constantly look at life as just, you have to, not that you have to play catch up, but that, there's still so much to go after. There's still so much. This is just a hurdle, right? We're just trying to get over this hurdle and go to the next. Life's a marathon. Right. And if you suck at marathons, if you're not good at endurance training and you just want to be a weightlifter, great. Go be a weightlifter. That sounds great. Awesome. I'm not a weightlifter. I have dad bod. I'm chubby as all hell. And I love drinking beer and occasionally running 2 or 3 miles a day. I'm an endurance guy. I love endurance. So that's always the name of the game for me, is just trying to play the long game, look at the long opportunities. A simple no now could be a yes in 5 years. We don't know.
Life's a marathon, not a sprint. That's what they say, right?
Boom. You nailed it.
Boom. I have the final question, and I asked everyone the same. And it's, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
Man, it's a really good question. I've always been enamored with athletes that are very invested into business. And I think somebody that I had the privilege of getting a chance to work with a little bit in his career as a player when I was at Octagon, but now who's doing just an incredible job is Paul Rabel, who's the owner of the Premier Lacrosse League here in the States. Everything that him and his brother are doing is incredible. Like, it's absolutely incredible with that league. And I think it's, someone that, he has his own podcast called the Suiting Up Podcast that they've done several seasons on, but he is, from an athlete and business owner perspective, there's nobody that can probably speak to the evolution of sport, media, entertainment, business, and property like him.
I agree with you. I actually, a couple of days ago, slided in his DM on Twitter and asked if he would be willing. And he said that right now is a very busy time, but I really hope that I can make that happen in the future. So great minds think alike, right?
There you go. Like I told you, that's why you are going to be me in this movie. We're the same person.
Yeah. I look forward to that.
I love it.
Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Marcus, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.